I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC 318, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. And I know this is out super late today, guys. My apologies. I came back from covering the Cage Titans event. I'll talk more about that on the show tomorrow. The biggest stock riser on this card is Max Holloway. Great performance in the main event. He retains the BMF title. He goes into enemy territory. I mean, everything was about Dustin Poirier this week, right? Fighting in Louisiana, New Orleans, the retirement fight, all that. There's a lot of people on Poirier in this fight. And, Max was a slight favorite here at minus 120. But, I think it was a coin flip fight. And I thought the type of performance that Max put on in this fight definitely puts him in the driver's seat at 155. He's already got the win over Justin Gaethje. For him to beat Poirier here, I think there's a very bright future for Max at 155. I think this win has to put him in the title picture, whether he's a win or two away from potentially getting a title shot here. But I think Max Holloway put on an awesome performance. I know Poirier had his moments in the fight for sure, later in the fight. But, to me, this was just such a big win for Holloway because, if he lost, he's a couple fights away from getting back to where he was. And with him getting this win, he kind of maintains what he had previously when he beat Justin Gaethje to win the BMF title here. And you just look at the stats here quickly. Max Holloway, outlanding Dustin Poirier by a decent amount here, 198 to 109. I know it's not the be-all end-all, but these are some things we do like to look at here on the stock report. I don't think you can go wrong with any of the matchups. I think Max is kind of in that mix now with, you've got like Dan Hooker, obviously Gaethje, we don't want to see him fight again, but you've also got like Fiziev, you've got Arman's in that mix as well, Paddy Pimblett, like there's a whole bunch of really interesting lightweights. And here's the thing, guys, Max Holloway, with him being a former champion, that holds some weight. So when we're talking about big matchups at 155, Holloway's name is going to be at the forefront, especially with him getting this win. So just from that perspective and the performance itself, Max Holloway, easily the biggest stock riser on this card. He gets full marks on this one. Second biggest stock riser, and people may disagree with me here, but I was really impressed with Patricio Pitbull Freite, the former Bellator champion, taking out Dan Ige. Same sort of thing. We'll go look at the stats here, but he was an underdog. I'll be completely honest. I counted him out in this fight. A lot of people did when it came to the matchup with Dan Ige, just because, Ige is pretty durable. But, Pitbull hurt Dan Ige in this fight, and we haven't really seen Dan like that. He's pretty, durable overall here. You look at the overall significant strikes, not a huge difference there, but I thought, especially in that second round, Patricio Freite really taking it to Dan Ige. The thing with Pitbull, why this win's so important, well, first off, if he would have lost 2 straight losses, I mean, that's pretty tough to come back from. What does the UFC do with them? But it's the fact that Pitbull's a former Bellator champion, and we've seen before with guys like Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez where, if you're a former Bellator champion, the UFC seems to keep that into consideration when it comes to big matchups. So I think with this win, Pitbull's in a very good spot in the featherweight division, and for him at 38, right, a loss, that would have been really tough for him at 38 years old, for him to get back on track and make some sort of run at featherweight. Now, yeah, of course, the Yair Rodriguez was not a good performance, and that certainly was something that we'll take tabs of, but we know that Pitbull is at least somewhat in the mix. I won't say a contender, but I think that with him beating Ige the way he did, he's certainly better than just a ranked fighter. I think at this point with Pitbull, the type of performance he put on last night, I think he's right in that kind of middle part of featherweight, and I'm curious to see what's next for him. So Patricio Pitbull, second biggest stock riser on this card. Third biggest stock riser on this card, this was another one where, there was a lot of upsets last night, and this was one of them. Paulo Costa. What a performance here. We haven't seen this Paulo Costa in a while. I think even the Rockhold fight, I thought he had a better performance in this one than that win here, but plus 180 underdog, comes through, takes out Roman Kopylov, who's a 2-1 favorite in this one, and Costa getting his first win, I think since 2022, don't know that off the top of my head, because I think that's when the Rockhold fight was. Yeah, so he lost this fight. He's in a really tough spot here, right? And Kopylov had everything to gain, right? Kopylov's not like a household name at middleweight. He himself, yeah, he had a few setbacks here and there, but this could have been the biggest win of his career, and it was a missed opportunity. And Paulo Costa now back on the winning track, after a couple losses. And again, he's been fighting some tough guys in the weight class in Strickland and Whitaker, but this was the type of performance Paulo Costa need. We know he's a fan favorite, and we know that the UFC obviously thinks highly of him because despite the 2 losses in a row, he was the co-main event of this card. So I think for Costa, getting this win here really puts him in a good spot at middleweight. A lot of interesting possibilities going forward. So Paulo Costa, big stock riser on this card. We got a couple honorable mentions. I have a bunch of honorable mentions here, but I think there's a lot of different ways you could go on this one. That I have to acknowledge from this card. First and foremost, Vinicius Oliveira. I know he was favored in this fight against Kyler Phillips, but now he's on quite the run here. Phillips is a ranked opponent. He hasn't lost at all in the UFC, right? So he's now got 4 straight wins. This was sort of the biggest win with the fact that Phillips is a guy that's been in the rankings for a bit, or at least hovering around the rankings. So that's a good win there for Loke Dog. I thought he put on a good performance in this one, so he gets an honorable mention from me. Brendan Allen, I know again, favored against Marvin Vettori, but Allen needed this disappointing loss to to Anthony Hernandez in his last fight. I thought he was very dominant in this win against Vettori. I thought he looked outstanding. Obviously, the UFC liked it too, getting the fight of the night. So Brendan Allen, for sure, stock went up. I thought for sure as an honorable mention. Gauthier, I thought, again, was pretty how much of a favorite was he in this fight? Yeah, he was a huge favorite here. So kind of expected, same thing with Dulatov. Like, I know people are gushing over Dulatov. Like, I can't believe he did this. It's like, well, Adam Fugit's 38 and he was sort of expected to do this, right? So I think both these guys kind of in the same category, big favorites going into both of their fights. I kind of give Gauthier a little bit more of an edge just because Valentin's a little bit younger than Adam Fugit. I believe he is. He's 30. So a lot younger. He's like 8 years younger. So, and again, I just thought that, whenever you go out there, you get a highlight reel finish. That's the type of thing that fans and the UFC takes note of. So both these guys get an honorable mention too. And last but not least, Jimmy Crute. This is a guy who retired a couple years ago, had like a bit of a semi-retirement. I know Martin Fashino is not exactly a world beater at light heavyweight, but still, and he was a minus 320 favorite. But for Jimmy Crute to come back here, get a finish, a decisive finish, look very comfortable in there. I really like what he's doing, and we forget that he's still only 29 years old here. So for him to get his first win since 2020, because remember he had a couple draws there against Bellato and Menafield, that's huge for Crute. So his stock goes up too in the light heavyweight division, which again is kind of up for grabs, I think, right now for a lot of fighters as far as moving up the rankings. Okay, let's get to our stock droppers here. People may disagree with me on this one. There's a couple different ways we could have gone with this one. I know the fight was close, but Kevin Holland's my biggest stock dropper on this card, and it mainly has to do with the fact that he had such a nice win streak heading into this one. The back-to-back victories at welterweight. We thought at welterweight maybe he's performing better, maybe he could go on a bit of a run, and I honestly thought he had a good opportunity here against Daniel Rodriguez, who hasn't looked amazing, so to speak. I thought D-Rod looked great in this fight, by the way. He was someone I was considering for a stock rise, but 38 years old, you're taking on a guy that, realistically, I think Holland should have looked better against. He did not look like a minus 605 favorite here. Obviously, he didn't win the fight, but I thought Holland, this was a missed opportunity for him, Holland's trying to keep active. You beat a Daniel Rodriguez, you're probably going to get a decent opponent after this just because of the fact you got the win over Luque. Like, he had a lot of momentum going from this, and now for him to lose, all that's kind of out the window. It's back to the drawing board for Kevin Holland. This is another reason why I tell people all the time, don't bet on Kevin Holland, because there's the odd time he'll have an opportunity like this that you think he's going to win and it doesn't come through. So, again, I don't think he had a bad performance, but I think that Kevin Holland is maybe not what we all think he is at a certain point at welterweight. So Kevin Holland, in my opinion, biggest stock dropper on this card. Now, this is probably where people are going the biggest stock dropper on the card. Their number one pick, and that's Daniel Zellhuber. How are you losing to Michael Johnson at this stage in your career here? Johnson is 39 years old. He's a plus 555 underdog. You're minus 850. And it's not like Zellhuber is like an undefeated guy by any means. He's had a couple setbacks prior to this. But again, it's all about the opportunity here. You're fighting an older fighter, someone that has some cachet as far as who he's fought. Johnson's been in there with, Dustin Poirier, Habib, you name it, right? So you're getting all that when you're fighting this guy, had a full camp, and you lose, and now that's back-to-back losses, right? Like, that to me was a tough one here for Zellhuber. And he's, look, 26 years old. Could he turn things around? Sure. But I think this is a very tough loss for Zellhuber, just because I think there was an opportunity for him to look good and it doesn't end up happening. So Daniel Zellhuber, a stock dropper as well. And someone we talked about earlier on this card, Dan Ige. I thought this was a winnable fight for him. I don't know what happened in this fight. I don't know if it was game plan or what, but Ige got hit a lot in this one. Dan's sort of the theme with Dan's career, and again, we forget he's only 33, he's not that old, but the theme with him is he gets that step up. It tends not to go well. I remember a couple fights back when he fought Bryce Mitchell, loses that key fight, then he loses to Diego Lopez, although obviously we know how good, the Lopez fight was the 48 hours one. Never mind, we'll skip that one. But like Lerone Murphy, right? Like, that was a fight where you think, okay, if Ige beats him, maybe he creeps to being a contender in that contender spot, but it doesn't end up happening. And same sort of thing here. I think this was a winnable fight. Had he beat Pitbull, you could say he beat a former Bellator champ. Then he gets kind of, back in that spot where he's getting close to, not being a contender, but at least on that path. And again, he has a setback here. So tough loss there for Dan Ige. His stock goes down. Again, 33 years old, but it's a division where there's a lot of fighters on the come up there. We saw, Steve Garcia, last week, Yusuf Salal. There's a lot of guys on the come up in this division. And I think a guy like Ige, unfortunately, with a loss like this, is going to be falling behind. So Dan Ige's stock drop certainly happened here. And then last but not least, going to do an honorable mention, because I don't know how much stock he had going into this, but Roman Kopylov, I mean, he's a big favorite going into this fight. Have to look at the odds here. But yeah, had the back-to-back wins, Cesar Almeida, Chris Curtis. I know he did lose to Anthony Hernandez, but again, I thought this was an opportunity. You're fighting a guy in Paulo Costa who's not fought in over a year. You can't capitalize with the simple fact that, just didn't look good in there. And I think Kopylov is just one of those guys that he's sort of hovering around the rankings, but can't really break through here. So Kopylov going to get an honorable mention. I don't really know how much stock he had going in, but still, for him to lose to Paulo Costa, not a good look there for Roman Kopylov, whose stock drop hits there as well. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What are your 3 biggest stock risers? What are your 3 biggest stock droppers? Let me know in the comments. Want to hear from you guys. And let me know what you thought of the card as well. We haven't had a chance to talk about this. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.